Getting to the point where we understand that working and getting a paycheck is a privilege.
You're listening to the Dare to Be Different podcast, a podcast for people who want to live an extraordinary life. Your host is Joe Altieri, retired professional wrestler, failed Olympic curler, and now is a successful dog dad and genius inventor. On this week's episode, Joe and his wife Alisha talk about how to balance your passions and your responsibilities. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Dare to Be Different podcast. I am Joe. My lovely wife Alisha is with me, as she has been for every podcast so far. So thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
So I have a special request for today's podcast. So one of our listeners asked the question, how do you strive towards your passion while still taking care of your responsibilities? So essentially, he has a full-time job that he has to do because he has to provide for his family, but he has a passion that he wants to pursue, and those things sometimes get in the way of each other. Or he just does not want to do the full-time job. Like, he's just miserable and just does not want to do it anymore. And how do you balance those two things? So any first impressions of that as you've watched me go through some of those same things in the past?
I'm sure you're going to kind of get into it, but, other than, hoping that he has like a sugar mama on the side that can support him, like pursuing his dreams of,
so
whatever
marry somebody
it is.
Rich.
Yeah. That's a terrible answer.
That is a pretty bad answer. So we'll have a new co-host next week.
Exactly. Well, that was one way to get out of. No.
So you saw, as I was developing Flex Screen, and for those that maybe don't know, I invented something out of my garage that now has, kind of jumped into a multi-million-dollar business that is, sold. We sell all across the United States and internationally as well, but it was birthed from kind of a hobby that I had just started in the garage, just tinkering, trying to find a solution for a problem that my industry was having. And it wasn't like I went out there and 3 days later, here it is. It was long. It took a very, very long time. How many dinners do you think you brought out to me out in the garage?
Several. Yeah.
But so, it became a passion, and it's a window screen. So it's kind of hard to be like, oh my goodness, I'm so passionate about a window screen.
Excited about screens.
But it went from a hobby, something that I wanted to try, to a bit of a passion, especially as I got closer. But I still had to provide for my family. That wasn't paying the bills. And, and that's a very extreme example, but I think all of us have something in us, whether it's volunteering, or I want to write a book, or, man, I really, really like pets and I want to spend more time. Whatever that thing is that you're passionate about, sometimes it gets in the way, or your real life, quote unquote, real life gets in the way of that thing that you wake up in the morning wanting to do. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is how to balance those, or how to at least be okay with the fact that I still have to put gas in the car. So now, as I was in the garage doing stuff, did you see, even through the passion, you saw frustration as well? Like, how many times did I give up? That I would actually start cleaning stuff up, and then I would go right back to it after a couple days. I can probably think of 10 or 12 right off the top of my head, where I'm like, this is stupid. Why do I keep doing this?
Yeah, I think that, this should be easier somehow, or, other people invent things, and why am I, hitting all these roadblocks, and why didn't this thing that I was convinced would work didn't work, or, things along those lines. But, you kept trying and trying, and it wasn't overnight for sure. It wasn't even overnight for a few years,
Right.
But I think that, whenever other people look at what you've accomplished, they kind of think, well, it was so easy for him. It was so easy for these other people that are actually, pursuing their passion and have somehow figured out how to make it even their career, or, make time to do their passions, that they think, well, it was just easy, so somehow you were lucky, or, that it wasn't a struggle or a battle, or, because we kind of don't have people, of course, there wasn't a crowd in our garage watching
Right.
you frustrated for 3 years, so you kind of pick up on the, whoa, look at that thing, you invented, and, all of a sudden it's this exploding product, and they don't really catch you at the frustrated stages. They just start to hear the story from day one of success, or day one of when it was a real thing, or, oh, we heard about it whenever you had a factory open, or things like that. Whenever the book was finished and someone wrote a book, it was finished, it was published, and it's a
must have been so
bestseller.
easy for them.
Yeah, it was so easy. Why is it so easy for them and not for me? It wasn't easy, and God bless the people that it is easy for, but that's a rarity. It is a struggle. It is hard. It was hard, and sometimes still is, but I think that the comparison part deters a lot of people from even starting to pursue their passion.
That's actually a great point, and not something that I was thinking, as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today. But that's actually a really, really good point.
Oh, thank you.
That's why we keep you around. See, you're back into co-host now. But the fact that we live in this social media society, so where everybody only sees the good.
Yeah, you catch them at their highlight reel and wonder why your day-to-day isn't looking like the highlight reel.
Right. And so, having somebody compare what I did with my passion and what happens with their passion is that a skewed perspective? You're
Very.
Yeah. And so, I think that's a really great first point is understand that pursuing your passion is not going to be easy. It will be rewarding in a lot of ways. It will be frustrating in a lot of ways. It might never, ever, ever work out. So you have to resign yourself to the fact that your passion is your passion. It might not ever be your career. It might never be something that actually comes out and is something that's, that you can hold in your hand, something that's substantive. It's simply something that you enjoy doing and something that you want to pursue. So you have to enjoy, and we've been talking about enjoying the journey as part of what we talk about. You have to enjoy the fact that you're just pursuing it. And I think sometimes that actually got me back into the garage sometimes, where I'm like, I've learned so much through this process, and the improvements might be really, really incremental. They might be really, really small, but I'm actually further along than I was when I started. And I'm a little bit closer to what I want to do than I was yesterday. And so you have to be prepared for the fact that this thing might never happen, but who cares? I'm enjoying it along the way.
Yeah, and it certainly won't happen if you are paralyzed by the thoughts of starting it because it was somehow easy for someone else. So you're frozen because, it might be hard, or you're frozen to not do anything because what if it fails? But so you don't even start this idea that's in your mind that, you think could be a real thing, but you don't even start it because of, worrying about failing, thinking that someone else had it easier, other things like that. But like the first step is to take a first step.
Yeah. And I remember even joking around with people. It almost turned into, because it was so long. It took me so long in the garage.
Very long.
And like people would come over and be like, "What in the heck are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm becoming a millionaire." What are you talking about? That was just like this ongoing joke where it was I'm making $1 million in my garage. And that was again, I poke fun at myself as a way of kind of coping with it in some ways, but also keeping it light. Like it was like, look, if this works, it's great. If it doesn't work, I learned all kind of stuff through. I learned metallurgy and the way that springs work and plastic, the way that, plastics work together. All these things, I had no idea. I'm a sales guy. What do I know about anything? Sales guys don't know anything. So
well, apparently you knew something.
I guess I learned a lot. So not being paralyzed by thinking that this might never work. The other thing that really helped out, even when I was, when I started getting close, when I'm like, wow, this might actually turn into something. Like when I had the first bubble gum and duct tape prototype, I didn't have a company yet, right? I didn't have, there was no way that I could monetize this at that time. I still had to go out and do my other job. So, there was this time where I wanted so badly to make this a reality that I didn't want to do this over here. And I think that's where this person who reached out to us, that's where they're at right now. But I had to have this self-talk where I said, this thing over here allows me to do this thing over here. So I have to keep putting my effort into this because I need this to be able to do this. Instead of going, this thing over here doesn't allow, like this thing is in the way. You have to say, no, this thing is a step. This is a stepping stone to allow me to do this. And it's just there isn't something physical. It's just a mental switch that you have to make where you look at it differently. We're, in the United States especially, we're so spoiled that we don't realize that like having a good job it's not a right. It's a huge privilege. Like we're 1%ers. The US, if you have a job, you're better off than most people in the world.
Right. And
so I think getting to the point where we understand that working and getting a paycheck is a privilege. If you can make that switch in your mind, it actually helps with some of the frustration you feel as you're trying to drive your passion. What do you think? Am I off base there?
You're not. I agree.
You agree?
That's all I have to say about
you
that.
Agree.
That's it. Podcast over. No.
So I think that's part of it. Then there's this moment, and I hope that everybody that is driving towards their passion that might become a career, I hope they all come to this moment, and we're going to talk about this in the future. But this moment where there's this decision that you go where you say, I'm ready to put this aside and completely do this. That moment is terribly scary. It is really, really, really scary that when your passion becomes this thing that you rely on, be careful what you wish for with that, because that's a scary time. And it's also a time of terrible introspection when you start doubting yourself literally the minute after you make that decision.
Yeah.
And then you really doubt yourself when you go to your wife and say, I want to bet everything, our livelihood, our life savings, our financial well-being on this crazy thing that I made in the garage. That's a fun conversation. But I'm glad that we saw eye to eye with launching on my passion project and making what we've made up to this point.
Well, I'm glad you did it too.
So anything else to say about pursuing your passion while still, providing for your family? Any closing thoughts that you might have?
I just think that it's definitely a leap of faith to just start something. It's sacrificial as well, so far as you still working your normal day-to-day job, but to pursue this other thing, like how bad do you want it? Like, be honest with yourself,
That's
because
really good.
it's going to take your spare time. It's going to take your TV time. It's going to take your, I just, do all these things, sit on the couch and, veg out or whatever you do. If you're, you might hike or you might, do all these things on the weekends and evenings. It's going to take your weekends and evenings. It has to take, your passions and things that you're passionate about and want to pursue, in addition to, you still have to provide for your family with your normal job. it does take sacrifice. And how badly do you want it?
Yeah.
Are you willing to give up some of that time, possibly all? How much time do you have to give up? And still, be honest with yourself to, keep your sanity in the process.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing this, pretty much stop complaining and do it, or don't.
Or
and
don't,
stop complaining.
and stop complaining. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want
Do
to
or
write a
don't,
book,
but quit complaining.
but you never sit in front of the computer with no other distractions, and you just lock yourself in a room and say, I'm not leaving here until I write a chapter. If you're not willing to make that commitment, stop complaining.
Well, just stop talking about it.
Or stop talking about
if you're going to talk about it forever and ever and not do anything about it, then I don't know. People are probably tired of hearing about it. They're being honest with you.
Wow.
And
The
that's
podcast
harsh,
took a
but,
negative turn all of a sudden. But
I don't know.
we do say this out of love. I mean,
It is.
There's no possible way that you can get started driving towards your passion if you never get started. If you just want to talk about it, you just want to complain about why this person is doing such a good job, why this person got lucky, why this person has all the breaks. Like, you have to go for it sometimes.
Yeah, don't be Eeyore and go, why bother?
Why bother?
Yeah, I don't know. Do it. Do something.
Just do
or
it.
Don't, but be honest with yourself and go in that direction.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Dare to Be Different podcast. We want you to live an exceptional life. And the way to do that is just get started. So share this with somebody that you love. Share it with somebody that you know has a passion and just can't start off. Maybe it's a passion that they've been complaining about not having time. Tell them, Joe and Alisha said, stop complaining, just get started. We love you. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to catch up with you later.